Welcome back to part 3 in this series where I take you on a tour of Greater Manchester and the surrounding counties, looking at the secrets behind community radio stations. Community radio stations are unique, truly local radio stations that have so far managed to evade amalgamation with the big corporations. Like episodes 1 and 2, we won't be covering stations that are now part of Heart, Capital and Greatest Hits and the like, but there is a couple of local radio stations included for the sake of inclusion. In these cases, these stations are part of a small or independent network. The main focus of this series is of course the infrastructure behind the stations, mainly the transmitter sites and the various studio to transmitter links that are employed, more of which I'll discuss soon. So we begin our journey today on the very edge of the city of Manchester at St Mary's Rectory on Parsonage Street in Hume. This beautiful building was constructed between 1858 and 1859 and is now the home to Legacy FM on 90.1. Legacy is the only African and Caribbean community radio station in Manchester. It launched in 2008 as Peace FM and is now an integral part of the African and Caribbean communities of Hume, Moss Side and the surrounding areas. Peace FM was set up by anti-gun crime campaigners Charisma and until 2010 had operated only on a restricted service licence to promote Peace Week. The station was awarded a 5-year community radio licence by Ofcom in 2009 after submitting a licence application in late 2007, and the service was originally allocated 106.6 as their FM frequency, but this was changed to 90.1. Legacy is committed to supporting and promoting the music industry, especially music of black origin, giving a platform to grassroots musicians, DJs and broadcasters, and making black voices heard on important issues. The station is managed by 65 volunteers and relies on sponsors, advertisers and donors. In March 2021, Legacy became a CIC or Community Interest Company. A CIC is a not-for-profit social enterprise. The not-for-profit status helps them raise funds in different ways such as grants, donations and sponsorships. Legacy operates from here at St Mary's Rectory in Hume, where its studios are based. There's no evidence to suggest that there's a station here in terms of branding or signage, but the giveaway is on the roof. This is an L-band shrouded Yagi, commonly used for studio to transmitter links between 1 and 2 GHz. The output from the studio is being sent to the transmitter site from this Yagi, but as I started to investigate, I questioned whether this is still in use. That cluster of tower blocks on the horizon is the transmitter site for Legacy FM, and you can see that there's a relatively new development right in the path of the studio to transmitter link. If we move over to Grafton Court, just 0.2 of a mile away to the northwest, and look back at the path between the reciprocal Yagi and the studio, that same building is definitely blocking the line of sight between the two antennas. The transmitter array consists of this pair of slant polarised dipoles that look out over the Hume and Moss Side areas. The site is 33 metres above sea level and the antennas sit 45 metres above the ground, and as you can see from the coverage map, the station has a good footprint across most of Greater Manchester with its 25-watt transmitter. Now we'll take a look at two radio stations that share the same transmitter site and antennas, XS Manchester and Radio X. XS Manchester is actually a local radio station rather than a community station, but I wanted to include it here as it's not yet been amalgamated with the soulless big corporation mergers that have destroyed much of local radio across the UK, despite efforts that is. The station commenced test transmissions on the 10th of April 2008 and launched as 106.1 Rock Radio on the 5th of May 2008. On the 28th of July 2011, Guardian Media Group announced that the Manchester-based service would be rebranded as Real Radio XS. In June 2012, GMG announced that XS would be one of 8 stations that it would be selling to Communicorp. In March 2016, following the relaunch of former parent station Real Radio as Heart Northwest, Real Radio XS was rebranded as XS Manchester. In December 2019, it was reported that Communicorp had sought permission from Ofcom to change the station format, which, if approved, would lead to the closure of XS and Global's Capital Extra service being broadcast on 106.1 FM in Manchester. In March 2020, this request was thankfully rejected by Ofcom. In May 2017, XS moved from Salford to its new studios at the XYZ building in the Spinningfields district of Manchester city centre. The station shares facilities with sister station Smooth North West and two global-owned stations, Heart North West and Capital Manchester. This is the XYZ building at 2 Hardman Boulevard. From the rooftop you can see the transmitter site over in the distance on City Tower, 0.6 of a mile away to the east, but I couldn't find any evidence of a studio to transmitter link here. What I did notice, however, was this rather modern loop antenna. What this is for I can't be sure, as there's no AM service to monitor from here. I suspect that the XS feed is fed to the transmitter by fibre. City Tower, formerly Sunley House, is a 30-storey high-rise office building situated in the Piccadilly Gardens area of Manchester. Built in 1965, it's one of Manchester's main broadcast transmission sites, hosting the antennas of local radio stations Radio X, XS Manchester and Capital FM, as well as digital radio multiplexes Digital 1, BBC and CE Manchester. I may do a dedicated video on the rest of the gear up here in the future, if that's something you'd like to see. This set of 8 45-degree slanted dipoles is the transmit aerial for the FM services up here. This array radiates Radio X, XS Manchester and Capital at 1 kW simultaneously using combiners. A combiner is a device used to combine multiple RF signals into a single output. It allows multiple transmitters or antennas to share a common transmission line, reducing the overall complexity and cost of the system. The building sits 43 metres above sea level and the antenna is 123 metres above the ground, and as you can see, the coverage of XS from up here is quite substantial. Moving on, Radio X is a British national commercial radio station focused on alternative music, primarily indie rock, and is owned by Global. Again, this isn't a community station, but is part of a smaller network, and I thought I'd include it. The station launched in 1989 as a pirate radio station named Q102, before being renamed XFM in 1992. The station became a legally licensed London-wide station in 1997 and in 2015 began national broadcasting under the name Radio X. XFM has held 28-day restricted service licence FM broadcasts in a number of British cities including Manchester. On the 9th of June 2005, the group was awarded a permanent FM broadcast licence to serve the city of Manchester as XFM Manchester. The station went on the air in March 2006. Radio X programming doesn't come from Manchester, so there's no studio to visit and no studio to transmit a link to take a look at, but the array at the top of City Tower radiates Radio X on 97.7 across a huge footprint. The feed comes from London via fibre. Now let's go back to community radio and take a look at Unity FM on 92.8. Unity is an independent multi-platform station with a target audience of 15 to 40-year-olds that aims to improve well-being amongst young people across Manchester and beyond. It broadcasts across the Manchester region on 92.8 FM, DAB and around the world on unityradio.fm. Unity Radio launched on FM in 2010 and has a history of reaching into communities with engaging outreach work, helping young people in the community and creating a solid foundation of local support across the region. The story of Unity Radio began in 2001 when founder John Green set up a pirate radio station with close friends Wesley Milne and Robert Hargreaves in Moss Side. Fast forward to 2007, John, Julian Guest and Northwest Media applied for an Ofcom licence, beating off 30 other applicants to win the bid in 2008. Unity Radio was eventually launched in Ancoats on December 10, 2010. The station's growth and success led to a move to Media City in 2017 from its old studios on Bengal Street in Ancoats, now demolished. This is the Blue Building at Media City UK in Salford Quays. Despite not being blue, it is the home of Unity Radio and the studios are somewhere in this huge block. On the roof is the L-band shrouded Yagi which sends the studio feed over to the transmitter at Manchester 1, 2.6 miles away to the northeast. This is the transmitter site at Manchester 1, formerly known as Portland Tower and previously St Andrew's House. It's a high-rise building in Manchester city centre that was built in 1962. There's a lot of radio equipment up here, and the Unity transmit antenna can be seen here in the form of two slanted dipoles. This array is shared with the next station we'll be visiting, and the output here is 25 watts, which covers Manchester and beyond quite nicely. The site is 40 metres above sea level, and the antenna sits 85 metres above the ground. Further down the pole you can see the reciprocal L-band Yagi pointing back towards Unity's studios at Salford Quays. There's also a DAB antenna up here, but I may cover this as part of a dedicated episode in the future. And our final station, again not a community station, but an independent local station that eventually went on to achieve UK-wide coverage, is Gaydio. Gaydio is a radio station for the LGBTQ community in the UK and is broadcast on 88.4 FM in Greater Manchester, 97.8 FM in Brighton and across the UK on DAB. Founded in 2006 by Ian Wallace and Toby Whitehouse, Gaydio originally launched as a 4-week pop-up FM station to broadcast over the Manchester Pride Festival. After this trial, the station went on to complete a further 3 short-term FM broadcasts. The station submitted an Ofcom application for a full-term licence, which was granted on the 7th of November 2008, when Ofcom announced that Gaydio had been awarded a 5-year full-time community service FM licence. In 2018, Gaydio applied for and won a community radio licence for Brighton, launching their FM service there in October of that year. Gaydio studios are based in Manchester 1, and as I said earlier, its transmit antenna is shared with Unity Radio. There's no studio to transmit a link to see here, and the 25-watt transmitter provides excellent coverage across the city and beyond. So with that, I'll leave you in the heart of Manchester, but be sure to join me next time for the final episode as we head out into the Greater Manchester area and look at some more community radio stations. If you missed episodes 1 and 2, I'll link them along with a playlist in the description below.